Welcome back to Book Club for Movies, and welcome to our 1 year anniversary here on Book Club for Movies. I know, it's been a year, and what a year it's been, but I'm genuinely excited, and I'm so proud of what I've been able to pull off this year. We're nearing 300 video views on the Fandango video, and we're just gonna see where this keeps going. I grabbed the shirt out of storage. I haven't worn this shirt since the first video. And yeah, let's do something a little different this week. I know that seems to be the tagline of this channel. If you're wondering why do I keep looking over here, that's because right over here is my good friend, the original Book Club for Movies camera. Now, for those unaware, I started this channel on a much worse quality camera, but this camera still puts in work for me every single time. Because the camera I had been using was a Zoom Q8. Now, Zoom is an amazing audio company, but they are a terrible video company. But the Zoom Q8 not only has the standard Zoom microphone interface, but it also has XLR inputs. So believe it or not, what I do every time I decide to set up one of these videos is I daisy chain 3.5 millimeter out from this camera all the way over to this camera. I take the audio out of this one and I direct plug it into the video into this one. Why do I do that? I don't know. But I know that it made sense at the time, but if I add on one more thing, it's already a Frankenstein's monster over here. It's just going to get weird, but if you're here for weird things, stick around. But now, let's talk about why we're here this week. I got myself trying a teleprompter app today, so if you see me looking off lens, that's what I'm looking at. We're going to be doing something a little different today, which you can also say is the tagline of this channel, because I feel like I say that every single video. I want to first start off by saying thank you so much for watching my videos, because as we are nearing this 1 year anniversary of Book Club for Movies, this has been one of the most fulfilling ventures of my entire life. We're sitting here at 11 subscribers, and we're nearing 300 views on the Fandango video. When I started on this project, I wanted to make this more of a discussion. You saw a glimpse of what I actually had in mind for this channel when I made that Backrooms video with my friend Ben, because that's always what I've wanted to do on whatever creative platform I ended up on. An honest, long-form discussion about a movie, but the rating should be the least important thing. The rating that you pull out of the discussion should not be the point of the discussion. I am an old school fan of Siskel and Ebert. It didn't matter if they both liked the movie or they both hated the movie. The thumbs up and the thumbs down is what the simple person or the layman took from the experience. But the rest of us just loved hearing two people bicker and argue and discuss the reasons why they liked and did not like a movie.
Well, I hated this movie more than any other movie on this show, and I'm really surprised at you. You should be ashamed of yourself.
What,
first of all,
for not agreeing with you? I've never been ashamed of that. I've been proud of that.
Okay, well, in that case, here's another star for your lapel.
Okay.
They would disagree with each other. They would disagree with each other on the reasons why the movie was good or why the movie was bad. They would disagree about everything. That's what made it so insightful, was just seeing two film fans just sit there and, honest to God, have a discussion about the movie itself. I listen and follow several film discussion outlets. I'm a long-standing fan of Red Letter Media. I religiously watch every single upload that they do. They are without a doubt my favorite channel on YouTube. I also follow channels like Hats Off and Joe Ramoni's podcast from that channel. I also follow Blank Check with Griffin and David. Now, when talking about Joe Ramoni, sometimes he'll recommend a movie, I'll see it, like Norbit, and he'll say it's not bad. I see it, and you don't need me to tell you that Norbit is terrible. That's why even in the era where I was reviewing every single movie that I saw, I didn't talk to you all about Norbit, because you didn't need me to tell you that Norbit was terrible. Another podcast I listen to is Blank Check. Blank Check is a great podcast because they go through an entire filmmaker's filmography, an entire director's body of work in chronological order. They'll let you know which movie is the movie that made him popular, which movie is the movie that made them successful, and what they did once they got their prowess. What was their Blank Check movie? And when I was listening to Blank Check, they ranted and raved about how good Speed Racer was. So I said, finally, I will track down Speed Racer. And I watched it about a year ago, and it was one of the worst movies that I've ever seen. But the reason did not matter. I just like hearing people talk about movies. I want to hear different opinions about movies. If you follow me, I don't want you to think of my opinion as the sole opinion on a movie. I want you to get other people's opinions on the movie. I want your own opinion about the movie. If you see anything that I talk about, go into the comments, leave a discussion. Let's have a discussion in the comments about any of these movies that I end up seeing. I score a movie because I feel like that is something that I have to do, just so I can not only track how it's fallen along in the years, but for somebody who might just be hopping in to hear my thoughts on the movie, they might just want it boiled down to a simple number amount. I do it out of 5. I like letter grades, but that's not entirely what I'd like to do just for simplicity. But the problem is that I've never been much of a fan of movie review outlets, the places people go to get that score, because they use that score and hang it around the movie's neck. They use this score to let you know if a movie is good or how the movie is overall received and how this movie stacks up against every other movie that's ever been released in the history of cinema. And this leads us to our topic today, where I'm talking about a movie by the name of Supergirl. Supergirl is opening this weekend, and the review embargo happened to lift late for this movie. Now, for somebody who's followed movies for years, typically a late review embargo means that it's a red flag. It normally means that there's one reason or another that they're just not releasing the movie opened early to critics. Sometimes there's a plot detail they don't want out there. Sometimes the movie's just an outright stinker. So they're probably thinking a poor critical appraisal is going to tank its opening box office. What was curious is I was already planning on seeing Supergirl. I really liked Superman last year. I saw it opening weekend. I haven't seen it since. I remembered really enjoying that movie. If you need a score out of me, I gave Superman a 4.5 out of 5 last year. Just because it was a near perfect summer popcorn movie, and I really felt a lot with that movie's message. The concept of just being, Superman is so focused on being good because he doesn't know how else to be.
It's just replacing one tyrannical regime with another.
Is that really how you feel?
I'm not the one being interviewed, Superman, but I question it. Yeah, I would question myself in the same situation and hold off a beat and consider the consequences.
People were going to die!
And how nothing else factors in. It's just the right thing to do. And that stays with me because that's why Superman is such a bastion of hope in fiction and why people strive to be Superman and how, that's what makes him more human than some people. That was another thing that almost hit me with Disclosure Day when they were talking about empathy being the thing that saves us from extinction. But, I gave Disclosure Day a 3 out of 5, if you need a score out of me. But I knew eventually I would see Supergirl. I didn't know if it would be at the theater, I didn't know if it would be when it came to home video, but I knew I was curious in seeing how they built this universe out. I really liked Superman. I really enjoyed about 90% of Peacemaker. that last episode of the second season aside, but I'm curious. How do they build this world? What's this world going to end up being? It's such a big opportunity, but I won't lie to you all. I am much more interested in a movie by the name of Clayface. I've been able to avoid trailers for it so far, but maybe I'll get a trailer before Supergirl, because I am recording this before I see the movie. If you're wondering, yes, I'm recording this on a Friday afternoon, and I'm going to see the movie on Saturday morning. I've been able to avoid all trailers for Supergirl. I've been able to avoid all spoilers for Supergirl because the movie just came out. And I've really done my best to divorce myself from film Twitter, Reddit, all of that stuff, just because I didn't like the headspace it was putting me in and I didn't like being constantly spoiled about things. Now, when this review embargo for Supergirl released on Wednesday, it came in at a 61% on Rotten Tomatoes. Now, when it comes to a website like Rotten Tomatoes, I absolutely hate Rotten Tomatoes, because people use that score as an end-all be-all for if a movie is good or not. If you're unaware of how Rotten Tomatoes works, Rotten Tomatoes uses various algorithms and processes to take somebody's review, written or transcribed, and if they've been labeled as a trusted critic, they'll figure out based on the wording if it is a positive or a negative review. Now, for Rotten Tomatoes, a positive review is 60% or higher, a 6 out of 10, a 3 out of 5. So even though you heard me say that, Disclosure Day was very disappointing, if I was on a Rotten Tomatoes critics list, mine would still be a positive review. If you want to think about Rotten Tomatoes as 100 people in a room to get that 100 percentage, how many people in this room would say the movie is at least a 3 out of 5 or better? So for a movie to be considered rotten, it needs a 59% or lower. Now, when that review embargo lifted, Supergirl came in at a 61%. Which means that almost immediately the story has already been cemented. The second those reviews came out, people said, Supergirl is trash. Supergirl is over. This is the worst movie of the summer so far, even though nobody's seen it yet. Now, yes, that score is fluctuating. At the time of me writing this, it has dipped back and forth between 57, 56, and then back up to 58% sometimes as more and more critic scores come in. I'm not expecting this to go back into fresh territory, but I hate seeing the story of a movie already be written before anybody's even had the time to properly see it yet. Now, as more and more people see the movie, now that the movie is officially open, you now get the user side of things, coming in at a 77% at the time of me writing this. Now, that's the popcorn meter, and that's based on how many people saying that they liked the movie, that had seen the movie, or posted that they see the movie on Rotten Tomatoes. You get a score out of 5 and establish that percentage based off of that. But I am sick and tired of movies being put in their coffin based on initial reviews. I would much rather hear somebody talk about this movie in detail than just yell at me a number score. This is leading me to a broader topic. This is much more of an essay video so far than what you're normally expecting from me, hence the teleprompter. But this is leading me to a discussion on the broader topic of review scores in general, and why generally I do not like or trust them. I really like when I watch a Red Letter Media review. They do not give movies a rating out of 10. They do not score movies out of 5. They don't give them a letter grade. They recommend movies based on aspects that they enjoyed, even if they didn't love the movie. Recently in their mid-year wrap-up, they reviewed Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die. That was one of the movies that I've enjoyed most this year. And they weren't the biggest fans. They thought maybe it should have been handled by a different director. They liked the writing, but they didn't like the direction. They liked the performances, but they didn't love the overall feel of the movie. And I'm completely fine with that. I'm just glad to hear they saw a movie that I liked, or saw, so I can hear their thoughts and their opinion on the movie, because I was genuinely curious. Now, I disagree with them on that. I feel like Gore handled the movie well, and the only thing that the movie needed was either to be slightly longer to flesh some more things out, or to be shorter just to cut some more things off. Because this movie is kind of stuck in the middle. But if you want to hear more thoughts about Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die, you can see my previous video on that matter. This leads me into an overall discussion on movie reviews online in general, because it's not just Rotten Tomatoes. The old heads watching this video know about this little website known as IMDb. IMDb used to be the end-all be-all for movie reviews, ratings, criticisms, and discussion online. IMDb was so great because it dated back to the 90s, and if you're looking for information about older films, you can see people's thoughts from when they left the theater, drove home, and updated it on the family computer in 1999. And I wish that Amazon would leave IMDb as a time capsule. I really wish that they could just give me an archive of IMDb and maybe do a hard cutoff point. Like either 2010 or 2015, just give me a cutoff IMDb. It's IMDb, but as it existed on this set day and nothing further. No new movies, no new thoughts, just a nice archive to flip through. I'm one of those people who loves those movie books, those books that are just, movies you've never seen, or history of the Academy Awards, and I'll just flip through every single one of those. But one of the most important things about IMDb that I want to bring up is called the IMDb Top 250. This is the list of the highest rated movies on the platform, and they have this entire weighted average that allows the movie to be on the top 250. Now, I'm not going to break down exactly how this diagram works, but I am going to put it up on here, right here on the screen for you who might want to figure it out yourselves. I'm not wired like that. But the crazy thing about the top 250 is that it has many titles on this list that have dug in their heels and they have been stone weighted in that spot since the inception of this list, it feels like. Let us not forget that Shawshank Redemption did not do that well in the theater, because IMDb was the people's champion for film reviews at the time. Didn't do well, but hey, it's number one on IMDb, or it's rated this highly on IMDb, due to grassroots efforts of people saying you need to see this movie, and you need to talk about it on a place like IMDb. And Shawshank Redemption is still, to this day, the highest rated movie on IMDb, ranking in at a 9.3 with over 3.2 million individual ratings. I remember being on the internet when people lost their minds when Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight entered the top 250. And as I'm writing this, it's not just in the top 250. It's in third place, sandwiched between The Godfather and Godfather Part 2, with a 9.1 out of 10 and 3.2 million people individually rating this movie. I love looking at lists like this, right? But a list is only going to get you so far, because there are people in this world who will swear by lists like these. If it's not on the list, they're saying it's not worth watching. And that's exactly where I disagree. I vehemently disagree with ideas like this. Yes, I'm interested about this list from a topic of discussion, but it's not an end-all be-all of the greatest movies of all time. If you're limiting yourself to the top 250 on one website, or any website in particular, you are losing out on the discovery aspect here. I mean, yes, I will self-report here. I have not seen most of the IMDb top 250, but that does not make my opinion any less important than anybody else discussing film. Because it is impossible to see every movie ever made. When we get into the discussion of a movie, you'll learn my opinion, and somebody might say, well, I can't trust your opinion on this because you haven't seen blank, or you haven't seen this movie, or you've seen this movie, right? I'll tell you that originally I was worried that I was going to be one of these people when I first got into film. And I went there and I, sat down and I went through the list of the greatest movies ever made. And I said, let me make a list of the movies I want to see off of this list. And at that time, Citizen Kane was widely considered to be the greatest movie ever made by many major outlets. And I said, okay. I decided to torrent it because I was in high school and I didn't have any money. And this was also a different era where you couldn't just rent everything for $3 to $4 or stream it for free. But I sat down, torrented it on my laptop, probably around 2012, sophomore in high school, and I was like, okay, greatest movie ever made. Show me what you've got. And over the runtime, I felt all of that cynicism left my body. I was like, oh, really? Greatest movie ever made, huh? And you feel it leave your body as I fell in love with the movie. This movie feels so much more contemporary than it is. I'm not saying it felt like a movie that was made in 2012. But it certainly doesn't feel like a movie that was made in 1941. A movie that was made 54 years before I was even born. And it feels so relevant. It still holds up incredibly well today. And I'm not just saying that from a technical standpoint. The story really holds up well because it's about a man. It's about a man who's trying to be the best man that he can be. He makes a list of principles, and as he gets more and more power, that power corrupts him more and more. But if you're wondering, Citizen Kane is ranked in at 114 on the IMDb Top 250, sandwiched between a movie called Die Hard and another little movie called Vertigo. Now, I'm not saying that's the reason to discount the IMDb Top 250, but I am saying that IMDb Top 250 has a lot of movies that I would not consider to be the greatest films of all time. I mean, if you want to know, let's just name off some highlights. I mean, above Citizen Kane, you've got Dark Knight Rises at number 75. The disappointing ending to the Dark Knight trilogy above Citizen Kane. Let me name you a whole bunch of movies that I think are worse than Citizen Kane that are listed higher than Citizen Kane on IMDb, okay? You got a movie like Heat. You've got a movie like Return of the Jedi. You've got a movie like Joker. You've got a movie again like Dark Knight Rises. You've got The Avengers Endgame. You've got The Avengers Infinity War. I'm not saying any of these movies are downright terrible, but I might say that about Dark Knight Rises, but that's a different story for a different day. But I'm saying you can't use this list as an objective meter stick for what movies are better than other movies. Because if anybody tells you The Dark Knight Rises is better than Citizen Kane, one, they haven't seen Citizen Kane, and two, they're wrong. There are people out there who rely on... Okay, can I tell you, Deathly Hallows Part 2 is on the IMDb Top 250, and Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone is not. If that doesn't tell you many things wrong with this list, I don't know what else will. Now, one of the reasons why I don't completely hate the IMDb Top 250 is it is a living list. Movies come and go off of this list all of the time. For example, at the time of writing, Obsession is currently listed at number 247 just because of the amount of people that have seen it and rated it on IMDb fondly. But there are so many horror films. If we're just staying in Obsession's genre, there are so many horror films that aren't even on this list. Which is, again, it seems like it's an issue. There are some downright classics that are not on the top 250, even in the same genre of Obsession. The original Texas Chainsaw Massacre is not on this list, but Obsession currently is. The original Halloween is not on this list, but Obsession is. And that's due to a little thing called recency bias. And that's another reason why, again, discovery is so important when you're learning about film and looking to watch movies. Obsession will probably fall off of this list by the end of next year, if it lasts that long, but it's crazy to see so many movies on this list you feel would be higher. Let's take a movie like Jaws. Steven Spielberg's Jaws, the movie that literally invented the idea of the summer blockbuster, and is a fantastic film. It's on the top 250 at number 203. You mean to tell me more people have rated Spider-Man No Way Home higher than Jaws? Because Spider-Man No Way Home sits at 202, and Jaws, again, sits at 203. And that doesn't make me feel right. A movie like Fargo is at 185. But a movie like Deathly Hallows Part 2, 180. That's why I don't like the IMDb Top 250. Especially when you have a movie like this, with heavy quotation marks, you have the movie recording, the studio recording of Hamilton on Broadway, the Disney Plus release that missed theaters, is at 137. Oh, you know, Hamilton, the studio release of Hamilton, is sandwiched between Jurassic Park at 136 and a little movie called A Few Dollars More at 138. But you're saying, Gray, nobody uses IMDb anymore. And really, you're right. Nobody really uses IMDb anymore. All of modern film discussion has moved to a little-known website known as Letterboxd. Now, I mainly use Letterboxd to help me track the movies that I have seen, or help me discover other movies from creatives and actors and writers that I have enjoyed. And especially since Letterboxd has plugins with Just Watch, a fantastic website if you're unaware. You can just tell it what movie you're looking for, and it will let you know what services it's available on, both paid, free, and subscription. And that's a really nice feature. But I hate the social media aspect of Letterboxd. Now, Letterboxd has their version of the top 250, but they've always tried to one-up IMDb since it was incepted. So they have the top 500. Now, Letterboxd's top 500 has a very similar weighted score on how they compile this list. It is the same living list like IMDb's. And if you want to see discussion on current films or more current film discussion, different things, Letterboxd is your place. But most Letterboxd reviews are less than 8 words, and they're a snarky comment, they're a joke, and people just, heart them just to be funny. It's not really a place to go for deep film discussion. You get one line, you get a snarky remark, and that doesn't tell me about the movie. That doesn't tell me what you thought about the movie. That doesn't tell me your experience seeing this movie. I want you to talk about why this movie is good, why this movie is bad, why this movie is interesting. It really is just a race opening day, the second you can rate a movie, to go ahead and be the first funny person. And that's all people will remember is the funny comment. I don't use Letterboxd as a replacement for social media. There are some people that use Letterboxd as their main social media. I love it for its analytics that it allows me to have. I pay for this feature. You get the Letterboxd Wrapped at the end of every year, but if you're a paying member of Letterboxd, you can access these stats at any time. You can see these stats across the entirety of your Letterboxd accounts or on specific years. It lets me know how many hours a year I've spent watching movies. It lets me know what genres or nano-genres were the ones that I saw most often or rated most highly. But my favorite thing is it also lets me know what actors, creators, and crew that I've seen most often this year. What did I rate them in comparison? Who's my highest rated actor or director this year? But the thing I really, really like is at the bottom, where you can compare the movies that you've seen that have the highest average rating, the lowest average rating, the most popular movie I've seen this year, the most obscure movie I've seen this year, the newest movie I've seen versus the oldest movie that I've seen, the longest movie versus the shortest movie. It's like a knock against all user platform aggregates that allows people to individually review bomb or glaze a particular piece of media. A letterbox allows movies to reach brand new heights, and people feel like they're joining a social movement when they're heralding that film to those new heights. Now, there's a movie in particular I'm going to comment on about this, and that's a movie called Across the Spider-Verse. I've not seen Across the Spider-Verse, but if you were unaware, within weeks of Across the Spider-Verse coming out, it became the #1 movie on all of Letterboxd of all time. Now, I lost interest when they announced that it was being split into 2 movies, and turns out they actually lied about that, and there was never going to be a second part released a year later, but that's just things that people like I remember, like the animation staff being horribly mistreated, and that's why there's been such a long gap between Across the Spider-Verse and Spider-Verse Part 3. But anyway, I did like the first one, but that's not what we're talking about here right now. Now, I'm not knocking that movie in any way. If you love that movie, I'm glad you love that movie. But I don't feel like a movie that recent should be the highest rated movie on any platform. I mean, even though I liked Obsession, I don't think Obsession should be in the top 250 on IMDb. It's too new. It's too new. You can't say it's the greatest. It's too new. But now, after everything that's happened, Across the Spider-Verse is now sitting at number 64 on the top 500 on Letterboxd. Oh, sandwiched in between a little movie called Empire Strikes Back and Lawrence of Arabia. Now, if you're wondering, the highest rated movie currently on Letterboxd is called Harakiri, I believe is how it's pronounced, or Hirakiri. It's a classic samurai film, but it's probably a movie I'll never see. It's a movie from the 60s, directed by Kobayashi, and I'll probably never see this movie, but it sounds great. Don't get me wrong, I just don't have it in me to sit to watch a movie that's 135 minutes, that's about honor, dishonor, and morality in the samurai code. I watch crap. I don't have time to watch movies of that caliber. If you're wondering, a movie like Shawshank Redemption, #1 on IMDb, is number 7 on the Letterboxd Top 500. There's nothing wrong with IMDb reviews. There's nothing wrong with Letterboxd reviews. But there's one more metric, and that's a metric that people like me absolutely love. It's the British Film Institute's Sight and Sound list. because there's nothing else like the BFI Sight and Sound list. If you are unaware, basically they've been doing this every 10 years since 1952. And the most recent ballot was in 2022, where they had over 1,600 people. They had over 1,600 critics and people that worked in the industry submit individual ballots of their top 10. Now, it's not ranked top 10 on that ballot. You just name your 10 favorite movies, your 10 best movies that you've ever seen of all time. And what happens is they accumulate all the ballots together, and then how many were on that list across everybody else's list determines its place in that ranking. And that's why there's not a number 250. There's a lot of movies tied for 243 because they had that many movies in common. After all the movies that are tied for 243, it jumps to 225th place. If you're coming to me and asking for the top 10 greatest movies ever made, you're going to get a very different opinion from anybody else. But if I put a movie list out there and it matches enough people, mine would be used to increase that on this list's metrics. And that's how you end up with the Sight and Sound top 250. Now, you know, a lot of movies that I have never heard of or interest me end up in the top 250, but that's not the point. You can see all the differences in opinion. You can see all the differences in taste, but then you can see all of the places that they have in common. And that's genuinely something that makes me happy, is seeing across 1,600 people, what movies do they have in common? Because down there at the bottom, you know, you've got Annie Hall and Clockwork Orange tied at 243rd place. But then you got a movie like A New Hope. A New Hope, it's down there not too far closer at 225. But then you got a movie like Pink Flamingos, tied with Raiders of the Lost Ark at 211th place. Now, they do this list every 10 years. And that's why it was such a massive upset when a movie that had never been ranked before overtook Citizen Kane, overtook Vertigo. Citizen Kane was the longest standing point in first place. Now, you got a movie that I've never heard of called Gene Dealman has overtaken Vertigo and overtaken Citizen Kane as number one on the BFI Top 250. That's because that's how much film culture has changed. And that's a wonderful thing. It's a movie from the mid-'70s. It's a movie from the mid-'70s that nobody had really ever heard of. And it just got a Blu-ray release not that long back. This movie wasn't even discoverable until very recent times. And much like Citizen Kane, it gets reappraised and gets all the way up to first place. That's a wonderful thing. And that's why the BFI list is my personal favorite. When you're talking about what are the greatest movies ever made, look at the BFI list. See that change from decade to decade. This most recent BFI list, they allowed you to see individual people's ballots. And there's one in particular that I absolutely love. Now, there were 1,639 individual participants in this list. But there's this digital editor for BFI called Henry Barnes, who made his absolutely absurd, and his would be the closest to what mine would be in comparison. Now, I will give you my 10. I will give you my 10 at the end of this video. I'd have to think on it. I'm recording this video in parts. But his 10 includes a lot of movies that I haven't seen but I've heard of. You got Wayne's World, you got the documentary Hoop Dreams, haven't seen either of them. I've not seen A Matter of Life and Death. I haven't seen Bo Burnham's Netflix special Inside. I've not seen Holy Motors. And I've also not seen the hockey movie known as Goon with Seann William Scott. I've seen the poster. That's how I know Seann William Scott's in it. But this is my favorite ballot. Why is that the case? Well, it's not just because he singled out a movie like Ratatouille to be in his top 10, but he included the video game BioShock in his top 10. I don't think they knew that somebody could do that until he did it. Which means, in my Sight and Sound list, do I put Halo 3? I might have to, but we'll see. Did that break the rules? But along those same lines, he also included the first 7 episodes, because those were the only that were out at the time, of Pat Finnerty's amazing YouTube series, What Makes This Song Stink? And if they decided to put those out on Criterion, I would pay $50 for that Blu-ray right here, right now. I love Pat Finnerty. If Red Letter Media is number 1, Pat Finnerty is in my top 5. Absolutely. Now, I'm kind of worried that maybe that might move things too far, because what does the BFI list look like in 2032? Hopefully we don't get a Mr. Beast video, but, if Pat ends up there in earnest, I wouldn't be disappointed. All of this in mind, I just genuinely want to remove ourselves from this weighted score when we're talking about movies. Movies are magic. Movies are miracles. Movies are important. Not only because they're the most collaborative medium that we have when it comes to art, but we use it to talk about so many different things. We use it to show different levels of representation, and we show all of these things. We don't need them to fight against each other. I mean, every movie that ends up in a theater is already a miracle enough these days, just because I can't even tell you about the amount of movies that are currently sitting on a shelf that have already been forgotten about, that they're not even being a tax write-off. There is a spin-off to the Megan universe. Didn't really like Megan that much. I'll say I'm morbidly curious about Megan 2.0 based on the trailer that I got watching Megan. But there's a spin-off to Megan called Soulmate. And the movie is done. It's been done. They've moved it around on the release schedule a couple times. And they don't even care enough to do a tax write-off. That movie is just sitting completed somewhere. A movie that people starred in, worked on, probably gave it their hardest, and nobody may ever see it. And nobody even knows it's out there. It's just somewhere gathering dust. Now, I'm not saying I'm expecting Supergirl to be amazing, but I'm also not expecting Supergirl to be outright terrible. If it ends up being a 6 out of 10 or a 3 out of 5, I'm not expecting you to, a movie with $100 million product tie-in with KFC and dog food. I'm not expecting this to be a piece of high art. But I hate seeing people sit there and wait to dunk on a movie when they haven't seen it yet. Nobody has, outside of maybe the 24 reviewers on Rotten Tomatoes opening on the embargo. Even though movies don't even open on Friday anymore, they open 7 o'clock on Thursday. Most people haven't seen that movie yet. And they've already written it off. Which I think is just, it's not in the spirit of movies. I like to go into movies with as little funk as possible. I don't want to go in with high expectations. I don't want to go in with low expectations. I just want to go in with no expectations at all and try to know as little about the movie as possible. I mean, if the movie is just a good popcorn movie, if it's just a fun time, it's a roller coaster. There are good roller coasters and there are bad roller coasters. But if I got enjoyment out of seeing it, that still deserves to be seen. And if it's done well, it deserves my chance at seeing it. So yeah, I'm seeing Supergirl tomorrow at 9 a.m. I'll update my tracking after I've seen the movie. We'll see what I do for concessions. Anyway, check in on you all later.